Let's talk about planning your legacy. And, well, is it more than just about wealth? Is it about ensuring your wishes are honoured and your loved ones are protected? Our next guest says estate planning, wills, understanding tax impacts are vital steps to secure your family's future. For more, John Addario joins us from Watson Addario Financial Advisers. John, good to see you again.
Thanks for having me, Andrew.
Well, we often think about, I guess, when perhaps someone has died, it's all about the financial implications. Obviously, it's the emotional ones too, but longer term, we think of the financial implications. What do you need to consider then?
Look, it's worth considering it earlier rather than later. We're often seeing now with the ageing population, people living longer, the prevalence of illnesses like dementia, it means that people potentially aren't putting in their wills and wishes in a way that they want to, and it gets more and more difficult as time goes on. And if your estate, if you're not of sound mind to actually form a will. So it's terribly important because you don't want things like being taxed twice for money that you've been taxed on over the years. So, John, what happens if you are intestate, that you don't have a will? What's the process? Well, it goes to the courts. The courts then decide if it's straightforward. Let's say you've got married to a spouse for a number of years and you've never had another one. That's makes it easier for the court to decide, well, there's a natural beneficiary and biological children and that sort of thing. But dying intestate, it can be very complicated if you don't have a simple situation such as the one I described.
Is it more than just about a will? Because obviously we have, we might have investments, but also super obviously is a key one.
Yes.
Is a will enough, or do you actually need to spell it out in terms of the beneficiaries for super?
Exactly. So with super, it doesn't technically form part of your estate because it's in trust for you. So that is why if you have a public offer super fund, it'll ask you for beneficiary nominations. If you have a self-managed super fund, you better make sure that beneficiaries are articulated in there. So yes, you need to make sure your beneficiaries are done on your super, and your will is done according with your wishes. And yes, it's like a lot of these things, it's best to see a professional in the area particularly for the more complex situations such as blended families, lending, sometimes older people in a family will lend money to the younger generation. All those sort of things create financial implications.
Now, we don't have death taxes here in Australia, but
no,
we have capital gains tax.
That's right.
Which obviously takes effect, doesn't it?
Yes, and it's carried over. So a lot of people think, well, if mum or dad pass away and they pass on, their investment properties or shares to me, I won't have to pay any, capital gains tax, but it carries over to the estate. So it's one of those things, if it does exist, again, treating it earlier rather than later, because things can be done, such as forming a testamentary trust for the estate that can help with the tax outcome.
What if someone dies with a significant investment portfolio, how can that be treated, particularly for the beneficiaries, in that do they then sell those shares, for instance, before the funds are distributed and the estate is wound up? Mm-hmm. Or is there a process where you can actually, do you have to actually buy them on market?
Well, look, but when I see an estate administered well, particularly in the case of shares, you can look at the portfolio and there might be some losers and some winners in the portfolio. You can equalise the capital gains either prior to the estate, or probate as they call it, either prior to that or after. And say, well, if we sell these and buy these, we're actually equalising the capital gains and losses. So the net effect is, obviously the best outcome is zero capital gains. So that, the good, well-administered estates are done in that way with shares. Yeah.
So, John, all these issues can be summed up into estate planning then, and I'm assuming you're going to say do this sooner rather than later.
Correct. Yeah,
and consult as an advisor.
Well, and particularly a solicitor that's expert in the area, because we can give guidance. We're a bit like the GP, the general practitioner in the finance world when it comes to this. And we normally refer you to a estate planning solicitor who's specialist in that area, particularly if it's more complex. So, multiple relationships, lending agreements, complex assets, and one of the big ones is beneficiaries overseas, because that's where, again, another lot of tax can rear its head. For example, in the UK, there's a 40% death tax, so that's where it can be complex when you've got beneficiaries of an estate that are overseas, which is certainly not uncommon.